Hello there. Have you ever listened to a song so many times that hearing it makes you want to gouge your eyes out? How about a food that you maybe used to love from your childhood that you've just had so many times? The sight, the smell, turns your stomach. Yeah. Well, today I want to talk about some video games that I hold near and dear to my heart. So near and dear that it might have been my love for them that has made them dead to me. To speak plainly, I want to talk about video games that I loved, but played so much, I'm not sure I can ever enjoy them in the same way again. In this video, I'll be talking about 5 games, presented in no particular order, that I played so much that I almost would say that I kind of dislike them. Almost. The first 4 will not be presented in any particular order, to which I overplayed them, or to what severity, or anything like that. However, full stop. The final game, the number 1 game, will be number 1 for a reason. That'll be the absolute game that I played to death. So that will bear some significance for being number 1. And it'll be interesting to see in the comments, for those of you who know me, I bet you some of you know what that game is. Very quickly, I just want to get this out of the way. I think all of these games are good. Okay? Me saying that I overplayed something to the point where the game no longer holds any joy for me is not me saying that these games are bad. Also, I'm going to be avoiding story spoilers. I won't be talking about story. I won't be showing any story, but I will be showing gameplay. So if you consider that to be a spoiler, I don't know, you've been warned. Okay, so with that, let's get right into my 5 games that I played to death. Number 5. Really bad at holding my hand up to the camera. Metroid 2. Return of Samus. Released in 1991, when I was just 6 years old, Metroid 2 would fill in for my never having played the original. I didn't need a TV to enjoy this game, and I remember exploring every nook and cranny of every single room, as I'm sure many of us kids did back then. I completed the game again and again, provided I had 4 AA's, of course. Eventually, I would play it even more when it got a second lease on life when the Super Game Boy came out. I think that was in '94, which was an adapter. You slapped it in your Super Nintendo. You didn't actually slap it. You put it in your Super Nintendo, you put a Game Boy game in that, and you could play your games right on a TV screen. Didn't need batteries. It was great. You could mess with the color palettes. Lots of fun. I would not play Metroid 2 again. Seriously. I mean, I had a brief stint with emulation. Never lasted long. My affair with emulation, or my relationship, I should say, was pretty much, you find an emulator, you download all the ROMs of the games that you love, you play a couple of them, and then that was it. I was never big into emulation. I wouldn't play Metroid 2 again until it hit the 3DS Virtual Console. I think that was in 2011. Bought that game right up. I like this game. I like Metroid 2. I'll get it. But by then, not even the large gap in between plays could get me back into the game. You know, my enjoyment quickly fizzled. I don't know if I'll ever like that game like I once did. Even worse is that when Metroid Samus Returns, a remake of Metroid 2, came out, I think that was in 2017. Can't believe it's 2 years already. Bought that game. I love Metroid 2. Same thing again. Oh, Metroid 2, I love that game. So I picked it right up and found that my having played Metroid 2 so much impacted this game negatively. I put it down prior to completing it. I eventually did go back and beat Metroid Samus Returns, but that's it. To this day, I have not played it since. Beat it once. I didn't think I got everything. I don't know. Number 4. Again, just a reminder. This does not mean these games are bad. Number 4. The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past. And I think a lot of people would agree with me. A Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past was the Ocarina of Time of its time. It's hard to believe, looking back, that this was the 3rd Zelda game to be released. Its graphics and refined gameplay spoke of a level of detail that I think you can only find once you've created a dozen other things like it. It's hard to believe, again, 3rd game in the series. Feels like the 5th or 6th game to me. It's amazing. Link to the Past was really a masterpiece when you consider that its 8-bit sibling, the original Legend of Zelda, was the only other game like it. Zelda 2, I love Zelda 2, was a bit more of a distant relative. Now, I, like many, must have completed A Link to the Past an unhealthy number of times. I knew the layout of the world, the layout of every dungeon, where every heart piece was. I knew everything. And I doubt all that knowledge has survived these years, but I've never been able to gather that enthusiasm to test it. The game's just been played out. The magic is no longer there. So true is this, in fact, you'll see a pattern here, that when The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds released, I think it was in 2013, for the Nintendo 3DS, I grabbed that game right up, just like Metroid, that I mentioned before. Grabbed it right up, and the commonalities between the two games hampered my ability to enjoy it. I beat the game one time. That's it. That's how many times I've beaten A Link Between Worlds. Never gone back to it since. And in fact, I was a customer of GameFly when I got the game. It was a rental, so I returned that copy. And then it was just last year, Black Friday. Well, actually, it was Black Friday leftovers. I was at Walmart, and I saw it. It was dirt cheap, and I picked it up. I've never played the copy that I own. That's how much I played A Link to the Past. Number 3. The Last of Us. Now, if there's one game on this list that I would want to talk specifics about, it'd be this one. But I won't. I said no spoilers, and I'll stick to it. The Last of Us sucked many of us in to what was an amazing storytelling experience. However, for those of us who'd go on to play the game again and again and again, we would see that it really wasn't unlike any other game before it. Took no risks. Linear gameplay, I feel like I couldn't have played it any safer. All that wrapped up in this illusion of a huge world. God, I'm kind of reviewing this game. I shouldn't do that. Anyways, I played the game on PS3 and PS4 enough to get the Platinum Trophy in both. Not bragging. Just saying, I played it a lot. You know, that's all I'm really trying to say. I invested the time, and I realized after a while... Anyways, I played it a lot. I won't say anymore. I just realized this kind of turned into a review. This has kind of actually almost affected my excitement for the second one. I don't think I'm ready for any more Last of Us. Is this going to be the last of Us? The final Last of Us? I don't know. The absolute Last of Us? The very Last of Us. That's what it should have been called. Number 2. Xenoblade Chronicles. When Xenoblade Chronicles released for the Nintendo Wii in 2012, it had already been out in Japan for a couple years, and I can still remember the fan campaign. I think it was Operation Rainfall that drew attention to the game and others in an attempt to grab at Nintendo's attention to get them to release the game here in the States. Luckily, whether the campaign had anything to do with it or not, the game got released, and I grabbed me a copy. It's an action RPG. Xenoblade was one of the best games on the Wii, and one of the best JRPGs I had played in a long time. It was a perfect blend of old and new, had awesome characters, great voice acting, great gameplay, good story. Did I mention the story? I don't know. Now, all of this still holds up. I'd recommend it to anybody who hasn't played it yet. However, even though the game doesn't take that long to fully complete, I'm talking about the content, not the story. It doesn't take long to do everything there is to do. It feels so like absolutely wrapped up. It's kind of like starting a family or building a house. It's like a very permanent thing that you don't undo and then do again. If that makes any sense, it's not like switching jobs. In fact, like the brakes come on so hard, I would say, that when the game came out again for the new 3DS just a few years later, I got it and I was like, I'm not ready to play this game again. I only ever played it one time. And even now, 7 years later, I'm still not ready to play this game again. And as much as I loved it and could not put it down, I only ever finished it one time. Number 1. Let's see if you could guess it, folks. Earthbound. This one, God, that almost kind of hurt to say. But I think it's time. You know, released for the Super Nintendo in 1995. I was probably... I don't even think I was quite 10 years old when it released. And I will always consider myself fortunate for getting to play it in its day on an actual NES with that big guide. What an experience. I will always have fond memories of that. Now, Earthbound, the Mother series, would go on to become quite the phenomenon here in the States. But boy, it was sure something to be a part of. You know, before gaming went so mainstream and now it's just kind of like breathing and everybody does it. I remember renting this game from Blockbuster, what seemed like every weekend. You know, the people at Blockbuster were probably like, what is wrong with this kid? He could just save his money and buy it. But I mean, I was a kid. I didn't have the foresight to even realize that was a path in my future that I could take. It was my Earthbound, and I wanted to play it now. For many years, ever since I first played it, really, I told myself that Earthbound was my number 1. I even maintained as such as the years went on. My favorite game. But it was only by looking back that I could see that I played it less and less. Still, I kept telling myself that it was my favorite game and probably always would be. And it's odd considering that I have not played the game to completion, at least, since it was released on the Wii U in 2013. And before that, that's anyone's guess. In fact, quick thought, I mean, the Wii, whether you liked it or not, was a financial success. The Wii U was a flop, and the Wii U got Earthbound. So maybe just kind of saying, you know, Nintendo did throw a lot of weight behind the Wii U in an attempt to get people to buy it. And I think Earthbound was a cog in that machine, you know, so maybe we should be kind of grateful that the Wii U wasn't a resounding success, because who knows? I mean, who can say, right? Now, don't misunderstand. I love Earthbound. I will always love Earthbound, but the magic's just not there anymore. I know the game through and through, cover to cover. I've opened every present. I've tried to use every bathroom and failed. Used every psi power, fought every enemy. There's just, I mean, I've done all this too many times. Yeah, Earthbound will always have a special place. Right there in the old ticker. It's the reason I bought the SNES Classic. Well, one of the reasons. To get as close to that childhood feeling as I probably ever will again. But I just think it's time that I admitted to myself, I just don't enjoy the game like I used to. I've played it that many times. You know, I've given thought to what might replace Earthbound. What could replace it. And I think for now, I'm just not going to have a favorite game if I ever do that again. I think I've just grown to like games. I mean, I always have. But I've developed a knack for appreciating what each and every game does differently, instead of insisting they be more like the games that I already know that I like. I become pretty patient and adept at overlooking minor flaws in my gaming experiences, and I think I'll just continue to enjoy all games without getting attached to any particular one of them. So anyways, thanks for listening to my story. That's my top 5 games that I just played into death. What are some games that you think you played too much? Leave a comment with your own stories. Don't forget to subscribe on the way out. Share this video with any friends you got who you think have had similar experiences. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day. And I'll see you in the next video.